A big hello and a very warm welcome to Starting Up with Ronnie Screwvala. I'm Sonali Krishna. For those of you who are tuning into the show for the first time, this is a mentorship series for entrepreneurs and is really a platform for the young and restless to mingle with the mature and the seasoned. And as the show title suggests, I'm talking about none other than Ronnie Screwvala. Over the last few weeks, we've seen a variety of startups across sectors and met several dynamic men and women who've talked about their dreams and challenges as they all attempt to walk the lonely road of entrepreneurship. And on that note, let me get the ball rolling. But just before that, let me welcome on board Ronnie Screwvala, who is really a man who needs no introduction. But for the uninitiated, he is one of India's most celebrated entrepreneurs and is the founder of one of India's largest media and entertainment conglomerates, UTV. And what makes his entrepreneurial journey even more interesting is that Ronnie has never been an employee. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Ronnie Screwvala. Truly a pleasure having you back. Here. Also joining us today are three very dynamic entrepreneurs, Akash Gehani of Instamojo, Neha Bhani of Moojic, and Karan Behal of Pretty Secrets. And with that, let me put the spotlight on our first entrepreneur, Akash Gehani of Instamojo. But Akash, before I come to you, let's take a look at Akash's journey and really his career timeline before he decided to turn entrepreneur.
Hi, I'm Akash, age 31. I'm an engineer and MBA by background. I grew up in Bombay and I lived across the country for the last 10 years. I've tried teaching and a bunch of other things in my attempts to start up earlier. There has been this urge inside to create a big difference. Instamojo happened while we were working on some other idea, which we had to shelve. What we realized was that isn't a simple way to collect payments online for millions of SMEs and individuals who run their own business. This is something which appealed to us instantly. When we pitched the idea to a few angel investors, they were excited. And we started Instamojo, then an initial investment of 10 lakhs.
Well, now that you know Akash's backstory, it's over to you, Akash. Give us a sense of what Instamojo is all about.
So Instamojo is a platform where we are democratizing payments. By that, what we mean is we enable every individual and business out there to collect payments online. Traditionally, collecting payments used to be a very tricky thing. It used to have a lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation, going to and fro with the banks, with lawyers, with dealing a bunch of sad APIs, which, maybe a bank or a payment gateway will give out to you. And what we felt is payments is the core of every business. And India is having a lot of, small businesses, a lot of people working from home. So why can't they collect payments online, right? And we thought nowadays, people are savvy enough to, use emails, to push things on Facebook. Why can't payments be as simple as that? So in that sense, we are democratizing the entire process of payments.
So it's essentially for SMEs.
Yes, SMEs and SOHO businesses, individual businesses out there.
Where do you see scale? How do you see scale coming through in your business?
So there are a million SMEs in the country.
Okay.
There are many more individuals who need, simpler ways to pay and collect payments from others. So the market is big enough. A lot of people out there who haven't been able to do this earlier. Like every single day, you get feedback from a lot of people. When they discover Instamojo, they're like, "I've been looking for a platform like this for such a long time. How did you guys?
Where were you all this time?"
Yes.
Okay. So what are your questions for on the show for me?
So one thing I want to ask you is, there's a perception about the Indian consumer being very, hungry for discounts. That's the only thing he goes for.
Perception, is it?
Well, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, that's a better way to say it, at least.
Yeah.
So, of course, in your journey as an entrepreneur, as an investor also, how do you see this shaping up? How do you see this consumer evolving? Will he be looking at beyond discounts, maybe for better experience or other things like that?
I think it's an absolutely fair point you meant, and it's a pretty broad point, because I do believe that India is a country where you're going to have a very mass market. So the challenges for entrepreneurs starting up is it's a massive market, but it's also a very under-marketed market, which means you've got to go out there and keep pushing your glass ceiling up and up. But the third part is it's a very price-sensitive market. And therefore, the consumer not only is looking for a discount, but he's looking for a very, very high quotient of value for money. stemming from 2-3 facts. One is because it's such early days, and in those 5 or 6 years, the onslaught of discounting on e-commerce has been so high that people feel now it's their birthright.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether who corrupted the first and who started the whole process. But that is, it's not a perception. It is almost a reality at this stage.
But would that change over time? Would the consumer look beyond it?
You know, if I take my own industry of media and entertainment, 20 years back when sort of cable started and everyone said subscription revenues and people will pay for content, I think for 20 years people are waiting for our content. For 20 years everyone's been waiting, and I still think nobody's paying for any content.
Right.
But Ronnie hasn't asked you the questions he usually does. So, you know, are you making revenue?
Yes, of course.
I mean, are you in the green?
Not in the green, but yes, we're making good revenue and it's growing up day by day.
If he was in the green, you wouldn't be asking about this perception is the consumer going to pay, right? So when you're looking at your revenue mining, where does that come from? I mean, actually, where does it come from? Because that's really going to be a big challenge for scale. Because I think, and the second one I would really like to understand, which you need to, what is your key differentiator? Because this is a platform and this is you've understood a need, but it's not a new need. It's a need that actually people are going to service en masse.
Right.
So what's going to be a differentiator?
Okay. And there's a whole lot of businesses out there who are using us. People like, tiffin services, professional services, into accounting, legal, so, all small businesses who typically don't have, a massive technical team. Like, it's a business which is like 5 to 10
employees. So you
understood
that they can't do the back end.
Yes, which is where we come in.
So where you come in what? How are you going to be competitive in this field?
What we realize is payments is a core need of a business. Right? If you're running a business today, payments is a supporting function.
Who pays you, therefore?
So we charge on a transaction basis. So today, if you're doing something, your customer is paying you, we'll take a small cut out of it. Today, we charge 1.9%.
Right.
But beyond that, we also give you, as a seller, as a merchant.
And so therefore, the perception was not that consumers were willing to pay. What would you charge them, according to you? In an ideal world, what would you charge them?
Ideally, I want to give out for free because I don't want to charge for payments. Right? There are a lot of other things which we can do on top of this, which you are doing today.
But see, that's the model that I think also corrupts the whole system. So you're part of the process that is actually compromising the entire thought process is one way to look at that, right?
I'd say it's about giving more value to the user.
But value is different from free. I mean, we need to differentiate the two words, right? They're two different words. Value means value, and free means free.
Right.
Any SME or any individual would have wanted to spend, they would have been happy to do 10% of their cost to run their entire billing mechanism.
Right.
But you're giving it at 1.9%. So how have you come to that sweet spot versus what the market should be willing to pay in a real world? See, these are, I think, the real ecosystems where all the new media companies are going to get either made or broken.
Yeah, that's enough food for thought for you?
That is, yeah.
Yeah. That was Akash Gehani of Instamojo interacting with Ronnie Screwvala. I hope you enjoyed that. But stay tuned because it's time for us to take a short breather. Because coming up are two more dynamic entrepreneurs who are raring to go and waiting to throw their questions at Ronnie. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Starting Up with Ronnie Screwvala. And now it's time to turn the spotlight onto the second entrepreneur. And for her to take center stage, it's the young and dynamic Neha Bhani from Moojic. I hope I got that name right. But before I throw it to you, Neha, let's take a look at what Neha's been doing before she decided to become her own boss.
Hi, I'm Neha Bhani and I'm 32 years old. I grew up in a small town called Kishanganj in Bihar. I went on to do my schooling in Darjeeling, Rajasthan, and came to Bangalore for my graduation. Prior to Moojic, I was working with HP in Singapore as a product manager. This was after my post-graduation. I did my graduation from Asian Institute of Management, Manila. And I have few years of experience in advertising, and that was pre-MBA. Post-MBA and post-HP, when I took the plunge, I think I dabbled around 756 business ideas before Moojic happened. It was during my MBA days that I found my co-founder Kumaran, and we brainstormed on a couple of projects. Then we realized it's location, mobile, digital, and music that caught our interest. And we started brainstorming on a couple of ideas, and hence Moojic was born. So with an initial investment of 10 lakhs, we co-founded Moojic.
Okay, now that you've heard Neha's backstory, over to you, Neha, on what Moojic is all about and why you thought there was a need for such a venture?
So the idea stemmed from Foursquare, where the user was always the king, right? So you get rewarded, you become a mayor, and what happens after that? So there's no answer to that. There was nothing happening on the merchant side, and especially in the Asian context. That's when we realized there has to be something that binds them together. And that's when I think sitting in a coffee shop realized that music, right? So we started with the concept of music and we went to them with a digital jukebox solution. And everyone was wowed about it. And that's how Moojic came into being. So we've evolved from a digital jukebox to today an in-store radio channel for
So I'm
retail.
curious. So this is Mumbai, all India?
Now Moojic is all India.
All
We
India?
are in about 1,200 stores
Okay,
across
and
pan-India.
you sub-license from people? Is that how the model works?
So we have our own royalty-free content that we
Okay.
have got from artists, and that's what we license.
Isn't that restrictive in its own sense that the royalty, not everybody would want, they won't want generic music, they may
So
want
how it-
elevator music, they may want hotel music,
Which
they may
is
want...
true. So how we deal with this is, as we understand what we do, we are like a Winamp solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you drag and drop something into Winamp, it's not our concern. So that we work with your PPL license, as in the retailer's PPL license. Some license, if they want to bring their cost down, that's when they approach us for the royalty-free music.
But I still think it depends on your repertoire, right? At the end of the day,
True.
is that your restriction or is that your advantage? What is it?
Well, in a lot of ways it is restrictive, but thankfully retail at this point of time is not as as music conscious as what the West or the Europe is.
You mean they're not as choice conscious
Choice
as much
conscious,
as
yeah.
cost conscious?
Yeah, they're more cost conscious than being choice conscious.
So what's your big question or questions?
So as an investor, what are the metrics that you look for a B2B startup, which you do not need in a B2C startup? B2C startup are primarily, it's easy to get traction as long as you have traction, consumers, someone talking to you.
In a new world economy where you're actually in a B2B space, the headroom is going to be very important. Outside of first and foremost the entrepreneur and their actual vision and their passion to make it go, it would really be the headroom. And that's why I started off by saying, if you're limited in your repertoire, and if that appeal of that repertoire is only one single USP, which is give it to me at the lowest cost because I don't want to pay for the higher ones where I've got notices on intellectual property and I don't want to deal with that. If that's your only offering, that's a very limited one. So you've got to be able to break out of that mold if you want to go there. But to break out of that mold, you become an intermediary again because if you're sub-licensing from other people. So really you need to get to the core of, and you've had your experiences in your past with some setbacks.
Yes.
I wouldn't call them failures because the good part is that you've gotten up and moved on from them. So that's the positive part. I think the critique is it's a very narrow band. What's your scale of revenue today? I mean, if you don't want to mention figures, don't mention figures. Give me some sense of...
So now we are in the green, if you would ask it. And our revenue typically works per store per month. So basically, we've tied up with artists and associations worldwide who provide us content, and X amount of our revenues is shared with them.
It's a fun idea, if you ask me, but you've got to make it into a business idea. That would be my input to you.
Ronnie, you've heard two entrepreneurs. And do you think they've all thought of their revenue models, or have they been focused on the idea?
I think for all of us, it's an evolving process. I think it's how smartly you look at it on a continuous basis, and you need to be your best critique, because this is a business where between media and between hype and between perception, you can be lost. You know, if it works, you're a visionary, and if it doesn't, you're history. So that's how it works.
I hope this was a satisfying experience for you, right? That was Neha Bhani of Moojic. And now we're moving to our last entrepreneur for today's show, and that's Karan Behal of Pretty Secrets. Good to have you. But before I throw the spotlight onto you, let's take a look at his backstory before he decided to turn entrepreneur.
Hi, I'm Karan Behal, 33 years old. I was schooled at the Lawrence School Sanar in Himachal and went to college at Franklin Marshall in Pennsylvania, where I majored in business management and international relations. So I come from a family background of which has been manufacturing and exporting ladies' nightwear to Europe for the last 30 years now. However, I never joined that business. I started a nightwear label of sorts, or a boutique in Bombay now almost 10 years ago. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and prior to Pretty Secrets, I was running an offline lingerie retail company for 7 years. Lingerie retail in India is highly unorganized and thus comes with many challenges. Having witnessed these problems firsthand, I saw the opportunity in building an online lingerie brand, and Pretty Secrets was born. Pretty Secrets started off retailing exclusively on its own website, prettysecrets.com, but is currently the market leader on all major marketplaces as well. Pretty Secrets was founded in 2012 with the help of an investment from the Indian Angel Network and Harvard Business School alumni of 3.5 crores.
Now that you've heard Karan's backstory, it's time, Karan, for you to take center stage and tell us about Pretty Secrets. It's a rather glamorous business.
Like I like to say sometimes that I probably have the most enviable job in this room. Pretty Secrets is a young, fun, sexy, and fashionable lingerie brand. We sell on our marquee site, prettysecrets.com. The way we've sort of looked at this business is that it's a very unorganized market. There's a lot of potential for growth. E-commerce happens to be the most efficient sort of distribution channel for us to get our products to our consumer, and we're leveraging that in the best way that we, best way possible.
So, Karan, how do you define the size of this market? I mean, how do you define the whole size of the market today?
So basically, the way that we look at it is what the entire lingerie market in India is, and like I said earlier, that's about $3 billion. It's growing exponentially at about 20% CAGR, so it's pegged to be almost 2 times that within the next 4 to 5 years. The way we really look at the addressable market from an e-commerce standpoint is seeing how much of that market will be online. Lingerie the world over, normally e-commerce penetration is higher than fashion as a percentage. And the reason for that is that it's still, unfortunately, and even more so in India, seen largely as a utility or a need-based product.
Can I just interject? As
Sure.
a woman, if you had to buy lingerie online, right?
Yes.
I thought, touch and feel is very important when you buy lingerie, right? So, I mean, how is India taken to the e-commerce buying lingerie online?
When we say lingerie, we only think bras and briefs. Lingerie actually is much more. So categories like nightwear, shapewear, swimwear. Some of these products actually you can't even try offline for hygiene reasons, right? So briefs for one. Bras is, even for a company like us, bras only constitute about 30% of our revenue. And that's where sizing really plays maybe a problem or a pain point. The second point is that the offline experience of buying lingerie in India is actually so poor that the pain points that you just described for online actually exist offline as well. There are no, we were in an offline business before this where we were supplying our products to over 300 stores. Outside of the large department stores, very few of these stores actually have even trial rooms or female sales staff and such.
You're the most enviable position in this room. So now let's ask your questions.
So I had a couple of questions. My first was that, I haven't, one of the things I struggle with is really looking at benchmarks in India for well-executed fashion brands and women fashion brands, right? Why do you think that is, and what do you think that it would take to really create a truly aspirational fashion brand in India?
Well, I think, firstly, the sense of touch and feel, as Sonali kind of mentioned, has been very high. So I think in the last 5 years, Indian consumers actually have come a long way because you're actually buying a lot of fashion online. Now, it's much more casual fashion because it's something that if it's got to really fit you brilliantly in that context, then you still want to try it on. You want to see where it is. And a lot of technology has actually helped that. So if you look at that, it's still at a very casual stage today. So brand play hasn't come in. Second, unfortunately, we have a strong aura of international brands in this country. So this whole perception of trying to build local brands, you're trying to create a perception where you actually have to go to the back door, because for most people, if it's a foreign brand, it's more aspirational. And here you're trying to create an Indian brand to overtake a foreign brand. And that's really going to be the key challenge. So then the product has to speak for itself. And third, if you look at the cultural diversity and the sort of level of self-confidence in women today, it's not that aspirational. So when you want to build brands, firstly, the women have to come out and feel that I want to do this and my individuality counts. If you take all of these thought processes, it's a tricky place to be if you want to create a brand in competition with an international market.
But how do you position yourself today as a mass, premium, or luxury brand?
So I would say in the mid to premium segment, wherein the aspiration is towards people who aspire for luxury products, but then price competitive enough that you get the same product, style, and quality at a far more reasonable price.
And you're absolutely right. From a business perspective, you're making complete sense. From a brand perspective, that's suicide. Because of the simple reason that the minute you drop, and it's not aspiration, and the reason why you have the global brands having that aura is that they've not succumbed to that thought process of actually marrying price with luxury or brand. And the minute we start doing that in India, you're actually compromising between the two. You've got to be able to stay that course But if you're marketing for a certain level, and then the price threshold holds there, and then it becomes aspirational.
Before I take a break, Ronnie, you've actually looked at a lot of startups now that you're also wearing the hat of a VC, apart from being a serial entrepreneur. And most of the people we looked at while we're screening, entrepreneurs, a lot of them seem to be of the mindset that they have an idea, and actually it's a digital idea because that's in vogue now, and they all look to invest, let's say 2, 3, 5 years and hope to be acquired so that their exit is quick and they've made their money. Do you think that is something that you advise if you have a good idea, that build it for 2, 3, 5 year kind of window and ensure that you get acquired and then you've made your money and you exit?
No, absolutely not. I just would not advise it for anyone, because for 2 reasons. One, if you start building a business with an exit in mind, chances are you're constantly preempting what somebody else would be wanting to look at, and you'll always look at the beauty of the eyes in the beholder, and your business will go nowhere. If you haven't built a fundamentally good business, nobody's going to want to buy it. So there's no path that says, I know my seller before I know that. Second, exits can't be timed. Never can be timed in that thought process. So you may think, I've got till here, and then it's going to go off. And if nobody's there to buy you, you run out of money and you run out of business. So your formula for failure is going to be much higher if you've kept that in mind. I would strongly not advise it for anybody.
On that note, it's time to take a short break. But coming up, we have a very exciting bunch of people sitting right here, been waiting patiently to throw questions at Ronnie. So we'll be back with that in just a moment. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Starting Up with Ronnie Screwvala, and it's now time to turn our attention to the audience sitting here that have been patiently waiting to get their chance and, get their opportunity to ask Ronnie all sorts of questions. And so I'm not going to waste any more time. Who wants to ask the first question?
Hi, Ronnie.
Hi.
It's Monish here. I need to ask you a question. How difficult is it to get funding at the idea stage for any startup?
I think it should be very difficult. And if it is not, then it's your honeymoon period and you're going to be spoiled silly, and chances are you're going to fail after that. That would be my general point of view, and there'll always be those rare exceptions in that thought process. Because why, at concept stage, would anyone fund you? Do you have a track record? Have you hit Midas touch for 20 people? Not. So I think it's very, very difficult. And if you have, it's because of something that you've been able to convince. The best way to go about that thought process is put your product to test, put your service to test in some form or the other. And I don't think entrepreneurship, first tick of entrepreneurship is about getting an investor. There's many things that you need to go for, and if you set that ball rolling, the foundation that you will need for your next 20 years, I think, will be much stronger.
I want to know that, we have read 2 theories in our MBA, like blue ocean theory and red ocean theory. It's like exploring the new markets and, pitching into the existing one. What is more easier to get into? Like an idea which is never heard, which is like some people don't believe in at early stage, and it could be an idea which is like similar to, as Akash has pointed out, like similar to Paytm, some sort of extension what I got from his opinion.
So not to sound disparaging at all, first I would say that there is a certain amount that you're learning, and you're learning the education part of it, and then there's a certain amount of unlearning that you need to do. To be honest, and I would say that with all due respect, there's a fair amount of unlearning that you need to do before you get down into the real world. And that's where the disparity comes in. Second, specifically to your question, there is no defined thought process. It really depends on, firstly, are you ready to be an entrepreneur, or do you want to go work in a company? Is the idea yours? Instead of trying to figure out, should I look for an idea nobody's thought of? I don't think even if you sat and looked out and gazed at the sea or sat at the top of the Himalayas, if you couldn't find one, you're not going to find one. So that's, again, quite theoretical as a setup. Go with what you have, then go find the differentiator. You're much better off finding a differentiator. You're much better finding the conviction. You're much better finding a co-founder who believes in you than trying to figure out whether it's in a red zone, blue zone, green zone, or gray zone.
Well, lots of thoughts really coming from this interaction, and hope all of you all are getting some clear messages from Ronnie and the panel here. On that note, thank you so much, Ronnie. There was just so many inspirational messages today that you threw out.
Phenomenal bunch of questions from everybody here, and good luck.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Starting Up with Ronnie Screwvala. Hope you enjoyed the show. Next week, we'll be back with 3 more dynamic entrepreneurs, a fresh set of problems, and of course, the man himself, Ronnie Screwvala. Until next week, chew on this. It's never too late to go out there and start up.